first things first, right off. I know I said this to you in email or text or however we were communicating, but I'm loving your TikTok content. Like, big fan.
Oh,
Big fan.
thank you.
Where's the inspiration come from?
So you know what? It was so funny. So I was super late to the TikTok
Oh, you and
situation.
me
I
both.
was
I
like,
just started like
yeah,
6 months ago. Yeah.
Instagram, like even with Instagram, when Instagram first started, I was like, what is this? I don't want this, whatever. Obviously ended up getting into Instagram. And then when TikTok started, because I think it really took off in like 2020, end of 2019, beginning of
Yeah.
2020.
Sure. Yep.
I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is just another platform, yet something else we all gotta
Something else I
do.
got to pay
I
attention to.
want to do
Yep.
it. Right. And then I started with my personal page. And then when I started Unbothered, I created an Unbothered page for
Hmm.
TikTok, but like quite didn't know how to approach
Yeah.
it because TikTok and Instagram are such different platforms. And then one day, funny enough, I made a dancing video.
Okay.
And in front of the dancing video, I was just putting like,
Little
"Hi, I'm
pop-ups and
Unbothered, an
yeah.
Afro-latina brand.
Yeah.
We're a unisex clothing brand," and it went viral. And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh no. This might work.
Yeah, so I keep it very light, very fun on TikTok because I think that's
That's
the
what I like
beauty of
about what you
TikTok.
do. It's the aesthetic and the vibe, right, is really fun.
Mhm.
And I feel like you are like really humble and you're just like, this is me, and I know this is a reflection of your brand too, and we'll talk about that. But it just seems like you're just like, hey, this is me, and like this is what I do, right?
Yes.
There's nothing more to it than that, right?
Yes, which is ironic because now I love TikTok. Now Instagram content stresses me out a lot more than TikTok content because I feel like TikTok is such a chill platform.
Yep.
And the more real and laid back you're on TikTok, I feel like the more people are
The better, the more
attracted to you.
genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, I love it now, but I didn't know how to like work myself in at the
Well, you're
beginning.
doing great. I'm a fan. You have one
Thank
fan at least, so
thank you.
keep that in mind. Awesome. Sol Williams from the Unbothered Fashion House. So excited to talk to you today. I know you've got this really interesting background, born in the DR, East Coast, West Coast. Talk to me about kind of living, being an immigrant to this country first and foremost, and then the bicoastal life that you led prior to starting Unbothered.
Yeah, so immigrating to a new country is, I would say, one of the most difficult things a human can do.
Sure, sure.
I did it at the ripe age of 17 years old, which
Hmm.
was a huge transition because I had my life already set in the Dominican Republic,
Right,
my
you had friends,
friends.
you went to school, right? Yeah, yeah.
Like I was about to be a senior.
Hmm.
Luckily my grandparents were always super transparent with me in the
Mm.
fact that I might be moving to the US. So that's why
Mhm.
they prepared me. They had me in English school, so I learned English while I was over there. And it was always a conversation constantly.
Sure.
So
So
it was
they had
never
that forethought. They had that forethought. Yeah, yeah.
right. It wasn't like a shock to the system because one
Mhm.
thing my grandparents did very well is that they knew their place. Like I called them mom and dad, but
Mm.
they know that they're the grandparents, right?
Okay.
And they
Yep.
knew that I was gonna move in with my mom eventually.
Hmm.
So it was still a shock because
Yeah.
obviously you're moving to a
Well,
whole
the
different
cultural
culture.
shock alone, right? All
Right.
the familiarity, everything you had in the DR, you're leaving behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but I think they did a very good job with like preparing me for it.
Mhm.
And just with the dream I had of being a fashion brand owner, it was just
Mm.
better for me to be in the States than in the Dominican Republic because fashion over there is still kind of a up and coming thing. It's not
Sure.
necessarily like such a broad thing how it is
Right.
here, how it is in Europe. It's like they like these brands and these are the brands they buy and like they
Mm.
don't
Mhm.
broaden from that.
So it's a little bit
Um,
narrow. It's a little narrow. Is that what I'm hearing you
Correct.
say? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And then when it came to living in the US, I moved to New York as a lot of us do.
Yeah.
New York seems to be the first stop.
Be the first stop, right? Yeah.
Yes. It started to be winter a month after I moved.
And you're like,
So as
what
you can
happened?
imagine, coming from an island, I was just like, what is this? This is not for me. Then ended up moving to Florida. and I never really liked Florida. Nothing,
Okay.
nothing against Florida, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm not a
one of
Florida
those.
fan either. Again, nothing against the fine people of Florida or the palm trees or the beaches. I'm just not
Yes,
a fan either. Yeah.
I've just never been a fan, but I
Yeah.
ended up meeting my husband there, so I
Ah,
stayed
so
there
that's
for
a good
about
thing.
six
That's a good
years.
outcome. Yeah.
Something good came out of it. And he was originally born in California,
Okay.
and he had moved to Florida when he was about 5. And so
Mhm.
I came for like 24 hours. He had like a family thing, and he was here, and I came for about 24 hours. Him and his sister took me around on like a quick tour,
Yep.
and I fell in love, and
You're
I was
like,
like,
game,
this
set,
is my
match.
place. This
Yeah.
is where I need to be.
Yep.
And so 3 years later, I finally convinced him to move
You came out to
to
California.
California.
Very
Yeah.
cool. You said something a second ago, Soul, where you said you knew that you wanted to get into fashion design, maybe own your own house, which you do now. Um, but you said that when you were still at the DR. So you realized this early on, 15,
Yes,
16, 17 years old. What kind of was this
earlier than
always
that.
just okay, so this was always just a passion of yours.
Yes, so I've always
Yeah.
liked clothes. I've
Mhm.
always liked dressing up. I've always liked fashion.
Mm.
Um, I actually used to make, mood boards.
Oh,
Again,
sure. Yeah.
I didn't know they were mood boards at the time,
You
but
just
now
thought
I know
you're
they're
just
mood
having fun,
boards.
right? Yeah.
But my grandpa used to buy the paper every day, and on Saturday specifically, a fashion magazine came with the paper.
Oh,
So he
fun.
would always give it to me, and what I would do would be cut out all the outfits I like, the accessories, everything, the articles, and put them in this notebook I had.
Oh, wow.
And so
You were creating, like, sort of your, I don't know what to call it, but your vision, right? I guess. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
I wanted to design my own quinceañera dress.
And
I
did
should
you?
figure it out. I never celebrated in that way to,
Okay.
like, have, like, the big
Right.
ball gown, but I did draw
But you
draw
did
it
draw
out,
it
and
out.
it
Yeah.
had very specific details on it, and then I actually ended up going to a fashion program,
Mm.
for about a month or so where they teach us the basics of sewing and
Okay. Yep.
drawing and those things. So I've always had a love for fashion. I always knew that I wanted to be in the
That's where you were
industry
gonna
one
be.
way or
Yeah.
another.
That's awesome. So fast forward a little bit, you have this brand, Unbothered. I love, like I said, love your content. So I've gotten a little bit of familiarity with your brand from what I see and in what you put out there. Um, I know that it's really important to you that the brand has, let's just call them certain values and certain pillars, right, associated with
Correct.
them. Can you talk, Sol, a little bit about those values and maybe where they were derived from? I mean, I know part of it, I'm sure, is you need an identity because there are so many brands out there, right? But
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about how you came to the vision and sort of pillars and values that stand behind Unbothered.
Yeah. So again, took me a long time to figure out where in fashion I wanted to fit in
Mm,
because growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, we've seen how toxic fashion can be.
sure.
And so I wanted to start adding my little grain of sand into
Mm,
that world to try to start making it better, try to start
mm,
making it more approachable. And so when I came up with Unbothered, there was a few things I wanted to address. A, make it a place where people can feel comfortable.
nice.
B, make it more sustainable by having really good quality items.
Hmm.
C, filling up that gap in the market where like my t-shirts are not 90, $100 so that you get the better quality
Right.
because I felt like that wasn't there. Like you could either pay $20 or you could pay 80 and upwards.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and then I also wanted to not only have this business, which can be so destructive to the planet per se, because we're still producing garments and clothes and things.
Right.
I wanted to give back with my business. So
Nice.
that has been the biggest thing, and what has been most important to me is
Mm,
being able to give back through Unbothered, so
nice.
that people feel good about where they purchase. Because
Hmm.
I'm a consumer first and foremost, and I want to feel good about where I'm putting my money. And so I feel like whoever shops Unbothered should also have that same feeling with like, wow,
Right.
I'm supporting a brand that actually supports causes that I can stand behind.
So many people are really interested and focused on sustainable fashion now, right? Kind of to your point. And I think you and I talked about this when we first met about how sometimes an $80 t-shirt actually feels like a $10 t-shirt because of the quality
Mhm.
isn't there, but they're putting these, these high markups on them. Do you feel a lot of what you were doing, Soul, um, does kind of help to perpetuate how you do have a unique attribute to your house versus any other of your competitors? I know one of the things you said is that I think you and I have a very similar approach to competition in that, look, there's enough room in business for everybody, but I'm just going to do the things that are really important to me.
Yes.
Mm,
So for me, I cannot sell something I can't stand behind.
mm,
And so that's how I approached the brand. It was
sure.
not so much focused on the competitors because there's always going to be a competitor. There's
Right.
always going to be the product you're putting out there. Somebody's always going to have a better, bigger
Right.
option or
Hmm.
whatever, right?
Faster, cheaper.
So
Yep.
yeah. So
Mhm.
what I truly try to focus on is doing something that makes me feel good, selling
Mhm.
to other people and giving to other people. And that
Mhm.
way I can feel comfortable putting the product out there or the brand out there,
Right.
versus focusing on what they're doing. Because at the
Right.
end of the day, again, there's room for all of us.
Right.
We're all doing something a little bit different one way or another. And so the only thing I can personally do is to make sure that I'm bothered is everything that I want the brand to perpetuate.
Right, right. As a Afro-Latina woman who's focused on fashion, again, there's a lot of competition out there. But also, look, you're underrepresented in that regard. I know I don't know because I'm not I'm not you, but I can only ascertain some of the, look, let's just call them challenges or some of the uphill battles that you've had to face. So as much as you feel comfortable, can you talk to us a little bit about, those things that have, maybe tripped you up, maybe not tripped you up, and how do you sort of think about overcoming some of those things?
I think the biggest thing that I've heard, and it hasn't been a lot of people,
Mhm.
it's a couple trolls. Why do you
Right.
gotta make it about being Afro Latina? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, because that's part of my identity.
Because it's part of your
And
identity. Sure. Of
so
course. Yeah.
the brand is an Afro Latina owned brand. So not only a woman owned brand, not only a Black woman owned brand, but an
Hmm.
Afro Latina owned brand. So that's
Hmm.
very, very important to me.
Sure.
Um, Other hurdles, no offense to men.
No,
I don't have anything against men, but
none taken.
just men
You're
trying to
married to one.
mansplain to me exactly. Mansplain to me how to run my business or how
Right.
to do this, or maybe I should do that, or maybe I should do this, or
Mm,
whatever. But for the most part, I feel like the hurdles I have encountered have nothing to do with the underrepresentation of Afro Latinas in the business or,
mhm.
you know, me being a woman of color. It
Sure.
has more so been just like things of the business, like shipments have gone wrong, things have
Right.
gone missing, things of
Right.
that sort. But luckily, I'm a very stern person, and
Mm,
I one thing I know how to do is take up my space. And so whenever I step into a room or whenever I step into any situation, I 1000% take control and I am confident in my abilities. So
mhm,
there's nothing another person can tell me to tell me that I don't deserve to be in that space in this space or that, you
mhm.
know, the Afro Latinas shouldn't be doing this or
Right.
whatever, like I understand my value and what I bring to the
Mm,
business. And so that's
mhm.
all I sit on. I don't let the outside noise kind of get to me in that way.
So when you look at other sort of black-owned brands, and I think of like Telfar Clements as one, right?
Mhm.
That really kind of rocketed up from a stratospheric standpoint, especially after everything that happened, um, George Floyd and other tragedies. Is having a brand like Telfar, and I don't know, no shade on, like, I don't know anything about the brand. I just see the bags, right? I see a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is having a brand out there that is as successful as sort of like the black owned handbag to have, does that help you? Does that hurt you? How does that
No.
work? I'm curious. I don't, because I just don't know, so I'm curious. So
Yeah. I honestly look up to all my counterparts in
Mm,
business, like Telfar. There's another company, I can't think of their name right now, but
mm.
I went to the um, Black-owned webinar with Shopify,
Okay.
and oh my God, so
Yeah.
inspiring. Because what Telfar did is basically what I'm trying to do, just at a bigger scale, right?
Right.
They
Right.
brought these handbags into the market that are exclusive, that are
Mm.
good quality, that
Hmm.
are a bag that everybody can wear all the time for
Right. Every
work,
day.
for
Yeah.
fun.
Super. Yeah. Ready to
Yeah.
wear transitional pieces. Yep.
And they brought the price down,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Because then you have the Gucci's, the Chanel's, the Pradas, the Dior's at thousands upon thousands of dollars that not everybody can afford,
Sure.
right? And then you have Telfar that has that quality, it has that household name, it is a designer
Mm.
bag. It's giving you all the fuzzy feelings without that thousands of dollars price tag. And on top of
Sure.
that, it's a black owned business, you know?
Right.
So I think that we're a great blueprint for any person who's trying to fill in a gap on a
Right.
business, because any fashion, like fashion is an oversaturated market, right? So
Sure.
whenever
Clearly. Yep.
wherever you get in, there's another thousand people doing the same thing, right?
Mm.
So I think they're a great blueprint as to how you can fill in a gap in a market that's already saturated.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's. He's okay. Let's chat for 1 minute about um how you came up with unbothered. Like, I know this is a very important thing to you in terms of this unbothered sort of approach to life you lead, I guess. So
Mhm. So I will first and foremost say that it's always a work in progress. A lot of people ask me, well, how do I become Zen and it's a work in progress. I still haven't mastered it fully, but I think it's mostly important that the brand reminds you to just don't let the little things get to you that much. I feel like well, let me reverse. When I first came up with a name, I met with a very dear friend of mine who told me, well, you need to create a person, and that person needs to embody your brand. And then when you come up with a person, then you can come up with a name. And I wrote down a description of that person. I was like, they dress the way they want to dress. They only do things that make them happy. They don't let others' opinions get to them. Fashion is fun. Fashion is not constricted to them. And that's how Unbothered came about, because growing up in a very much Catholic, old school, very conservative country, I was always told girls dress like this and boys dress like that. I've always loved wearing comfortable clothes, t-shirts, sweatshirts, yeah, sweatshirts, sweatpants, baggy jeans. I always loved it. And so the fact that I would perceived as masculine by dressing that way to me is a little ridiculous, right? And so Unbothered is just about you doing whatever makes you happy, whether it's wearing the brand itself or wearing just whatever you want to wear, living your life to where you see you can live it to the fullest, so long as you're not harming other people. Then the outsider opinions shouldn't get to you and shouldn't bother you. So that's where the name came about.
I appreciate what you're saying too about the not being labeled or boxed into this is a masculine way of dressing, this is a feminine way of dressing, right? And it we really seem like, as at least in my opinion, again, uneducated opinion, but what I see when I look at social media or when I hear things, it seems like as a society we've only sort of very recently started to come into a place where there is sort of like, I'll just call it acceptance, right? Maybe a little bit of understanding, soul, where people can look at something and say, oh yeah, that's you know that's not the way a man dresses or a woman dresses, that's just the way a person dresses, right? So I
Yeah.
really appreciate what you have said there about how about how transparent you are around sort of gender neutrality and sort of the unisex feel that you're doing.
Yeah, because I feel like fashion are just a way of expressing yourself. So
Mhm.
who's to tell you that you have cultures where men wear skirts, and that's a cultural thing.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't make them any less manly.
Mm.
because they wear a skirt,
Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of like that same feeling. And I think what you say, you hit it on the head when you said that it's just been a recent thing. But
Right.
I think what happened is that us millennials had to go through the toxic low rise jeans, skinny jeans,
Right.
no show socks, all
Right.
the things. I had to adhere to all these fashion rules. And I feel like at some point we said enough is enough,
Right.
right? And then now when enter Gen Z,
Right.
they're dressing however they want to
They
dress.
have a very different
They
approach.
don't
Yeah.
care. They
One
don't
might
care.
say an
They
unbothered approach.
Yeah, yes, yes. Gen Z is definitely unbothered. And so to me, I find it beautiful, but I do think that it's been recent with Gen Z
Mm,
just basically starting with millennials just saying enough is enough.
right.
We're not gonna let the fashion world bully us.
Bully us
And then
anymore because they bullied us long enough.
anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then moving on to Gen Zers, just taking it upon themselves to just dress however they want to dress
Yeah.
and not worry
Interesting.
about what anybody else says.
Do you know the online social media personality or comedian? Her name is Kate Steinberg. Are you familiar with Kate Steinberg?
I don't, not by
Maybe.
name, but maybe.
Okay, yeah. So she is a millennial and she does a lot of her content is focused on sort of the toxicity that was the fashion that you grew up with 2006, 2007, the domination of, and again, not to throw shade on a brand, but the domination of sort of Pink and Victoria's Secret and these other, brands where there was so much like if you didn't conform to this, then you were not at all accepted, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
and
mean, there has been, sorry to interrupt, but there has
yeah,
been former CEOs of the brands that have made statements saying that they
right,
don't want certain types of people wearing their clothes. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. And I think of like even again, I'm throwing shade on brands. I'm sorry, but like I think of like Lululemon and others, right, that have made very certain specific comments. I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up kind of the grunge sort of feel, but at the same time, some of my cultural icons like Kurt Cobain, for example, he was very comfortable dressing in skirts, dresses, these kinds of things. And at the time, people were like, "Oh my god, like why is Kurt wearing a skirt on stage?" And it was just like, because he wants to, right? It's just there's
Yeah.
no statement there. It's just so interesting.
It's just a
Um,
skirt.
yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what's going well for you guys right now. What are you excited about, Soul? I think again, the last time we chatted, you were doing some launches, things were going well. Um, Pieces that you were advertising were already sold. Talk to me about
Yeah.
yeah, you big smile on your face right now. What's making you happy right now? What's going well?
Well, we have a very exciting campaign happening for Hispanic Heritage Month. We're launching an exclusive T-shirt, so it will only be available while it lasts. Um, and we're going to donate 15% of the proceeds to an organization called We United.
That's outstanding.
And I am very, very excited because it's very dear and close to my heart.
Sure.
So I'm going to show you guys the shirt.
Oh,
So
cool.
this is our new logo. It's called
Love it.
Dique on Bother. So
Okay.
Dique means supposedly in
Hmm.
English. It's a word that us Dominicans use a lot.
Sure.
And so I basically made it, again, reverting back to what I said, it's always a work in progress,
Nice.
right? Like
Nice.
we're always working towards being unbothered in life. There's things that are going to test us, seasons that are going to be a little more difficult than others, right? So I kind of made this shirt just to remind everybody, like, yeah, it's fun, it's light, it's like you're always working on it, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to be unbothered today and like change my mindset today. I think a lot of people come online and be like, you need to change your mindset, and it's like that's really how it works. It
Yeah,
takes a
right.
lot of work to do
That's
that.
so cool.
So I am really excited about that. And then we launched our XL tote, which was a long time in the making. It has, you can fit your entire life in there. My
Oh, I love
husband
a
and I
good
went to
tote.
Vegas.
Oh, that's awesome.
So good. We went to Vegas overnight and we literally packed all of our stuff in the tote and
Oh,
we
that's
still have
fabulous.
room. So
Yeah.
So very excited about that. So those are the new things that the line has coming, and then
I love
next
it.
year we'll have more coming, obviously. So
My frequently used word in Spanish is entonces. I always am finding a reason to use that word, probably incorrectly. I just find a way to say all the time, and
yeah.
I love DK. That's amazing. You had mentioned too, Sol. It's really important to you to give back. You talked a little bit about just now with Hispanic Heritage Month, but I know there's even more that you do in terms of the social impact that you hope your brand has. Tell us a little bit more about some of those endeavors.
Yeah, so it honestly started for me when I really, so I've always envisioned the brand donating, giving back to the community. That's always been very deeply ingrained in me.
Sure.
I think that there's a flow to life, and you always need to keep things flowing.
Mm,
And that's also a big reason why I give, because you always should keep things circulating. Don't hold to
right.
your blessings. Try to give to others.
Right.
Um, and but it really, really took off for me when Roe v. Wade was overturned, or when the decision of
Mm,
Roe v. Wade being
mhm.
overturned was made. And that was the first time where I was like, wow, like I really need to use Unbothered in a big way here. And so we
Mhm.
were able to donate about $400 to Planned Parenthood, which was amazing. It was
That's
a
amazing. Yeah,
huge
every
time for the
dollar
brand.
is impactful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so from there, I just every year I try to pick one or two organizations. Obviously, I'm still a small business,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
I can't do it
You have to be
as big of a
strategic.
scale as I
Yeah,
would
you have
like
to
to
be
get.
strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I try to pick one or two organizations. So earlier this year, we donated to the um, the NAACP Defense Fund
Oh, cool.
um, for Black History Month.
Mhm.
And then we're donating now in September for Hispanic Heritage Month. So it's something I always want to keep going. I do want to
Yeah.
grow it eventually and do maybe like school donations. You know, we did donate to like a women's shelter, and last December we donated toys to kids that for Christmas. So you know, I'm always trying to evolve it
Yeah.
in that way and trying to
You're
find
keeping the
other places
impact
that I
at
can
the
give.
forefront of the brand and what you're doing. So that's really
Yes.
wonderful.
And
Yeah.
we actually do have a tab on our website that's called Giving Back.
Hmm.
And if any organization is watching, we do have a form you can fill out on there that so that you can submit your organization to us. And also, if people are interested, there's also like basically all of our donations and receipts are also on that page, so they can
Hmm.
go see and confirm or look at what these organizations are about.
Super. Super. I would love to hear a little bit about, your community. And what I mean by that, Soul, is, the community of entrepreneurs that you find yourself among, especially in Southern California, I guess.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a crazy place, right? And there's no shortage of uh, things going on. So many
Yeah.
of the entrepreneurs and founders that we talk to on the show, their communities and the communities that they've been able to build are essential to them, and to sort of sometimes not even just the survival of their business, but just the survival of their mental health, right? And knowing that
Yes.
there's another person out there that's kind of going through the same things that I'm going through. Have you found a community that you've kind of been able to, find solace in or establish yourself within, Soul?
Yeah, so I first and foremost talk to everybody because I'm like that. I need to go say hi to everybody. So whenever I do a pop-up, I'll go to all the booths. I'll like walk around, I'll go stop by, talk to the owner,
Yeah.
you know, kind of like get feedback and give feedback as well. But I do have a group of small business owners who all happen to be women, but I do have a
That's
core
great.
group
Yeah,
of
but this
small
is your
business
posse,
owners.
right? This is your group. Yeah.
Yes, and we kind of run things by each other. We check
Nice.
in. Oh, hey, how you doing? How did this go for you? You know, what do you think about this? And it's always an evolving group. Like
Yeah.
I always make new friends, and especially I like to keep myself in an entrepreneurial space just
Mm,
because I like to have different areas where I can see, oh, I saw where this person started, and now look, they took off. They're like in all these major retailers. They're doing amazing. Look at their business flourish. And then I know some people that are like in the in between stage where like their business has grown, but they haven't
Right.
accomplished all their goals. And
Right.
then I know people who are starting out, you know. So I think having that mindset around you is very important, which is a reason, one of the reasons why I left Florida is because everybody around me in Florida wanted the white picket fence, marriage, kids, and go to your 9 to 5. And I just never thought that way. And nothing wrong with that,
No,
obviously.
it's
Whatever anybody
fine
wants to do.
for you if
Like,
that's what you want. Yeah.
yes. Whatever anybody wants to do. I don't like to yuck anybody's yum.
Right.
Do whatever what makes you happy. But I never felt that way. I always wanted to like go in the entrepreneurial world and be my own boss and grow in that aspect, be in fashion.
Mm,
And so I think here I've been able to find that community a lot easier because I want to say 99% of the people I know and relate myself with are business owners, are
nice.
entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
you know? So I'm able to look at them and say, okay, we've gone through the same struggles, or I'll if I'm making a huge decision where like I've never made that decision for my business, I'll text them. I was like, hey, did you ever implement this? If
Right.
so, when? What do you think about it? You know, so I'm able to use my resources a lot more and reach out here than I would have been in Florida per se.
Mm. We're about, oh gosh, I hate to think about this, Soul, but we're like barreling down on September, and you mentioned
I
obviously
know.
Hispanic Heritage Month, and you've got a major project in the works for that. But gosh, the end of this year is going to be here before we know it. And how are you feeling towards, and maybe you don't do yearly goals, so this might not be an appropriate question for you, but I'm just kind of
Sure.
curious all about how you're feeling around, it's the eighth month, ninth month of the year. Are you feeling good about 24? What are some of the major projects you have coming down the path potentially for 25? Like, what's exciting to you right now?
So I think that we've done really well in 2024. It's
Mhm.
not all financial for me, though. I
Sure.
understand
Yeah.
that this business is in a growing aspect. So I don't particularly get discouraged about the financial side. Retail is just a very difficult space to break into, regardless.
Right.
So you see the ups and downs, even with big retailers, you know, like you see their ups and downs. So, but I think in regards to like operational, adding product, adding things and investing into the brand, I think I've hit a
Mm.
lot of my goals and I've been
Mhm.
able to make a lot of the things happen. We're about to go on our first year anniversary of being in the office space, which is huge
That's
for me that
huge.
I was
That's
able to
a wonderful
maintain
thing to
this for a
celebrate.
year.
Yeah. Yeah, having physical
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. And so with next year, we want to grow even more. We want to, I hope Lisbeth doesn't kill me for saying this,
Ah,
but I don't know how hush hush this has to be, but we're, have plans of like traveling with the brand and
yeah.
maybe doing like appearances in other
Maybe
states
coming back out to the
and
East Coast,
starting.
just putting it out there.
Yes, 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 for sure. And then also hosting events in California, hosting events in other states.
Sure.
So we have a lot of big plans for the brand in 2025 that I hope to accomplish. But yeah, I think 2024 is going great. I think I gave myself a lot of grace this year,
Yeah.
to not add as much product to the brand, to kind of start slowing down in that and just add all the product I add is very intentional. I
Intentional
take my
pieces. Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
but I want to niche that down even more because I don't want it to start becoming like all these things in the brand and then it starts just becoming another fast fashion brand, which is it's a very fine line to thread.
Right.
Um, so I think I accomplished that very well, just adding the pieces that the brand needed instead of
Mhm.
just adding more and more pieces to the brand.
Mhm.
So to
Mhm.
keep that going, and a big dream of mine is to grow the Unbothered team to more people. So hopefully 2025 is the year for that.
Good. Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly you need people, right? So
Yeah.
and the sooner you can start to build that, that's great. And there's a whole nother level of I don't know what to call it, but maybe it's just angst, for lack of a better word. Once you have several employees, and those people are also relying on you for their livelihood, right? So
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
that's a lot to think
Yeah.
about for sure, right? In the category, Soul, of I wish I knew then what I know now, right? As you kind of think about some of the major learnings that you've had, or that have been passed on to you, you mentioned, of course, intentionality, and you mentioned, giving yourself grace and other things. Are there any other, let's just call them, friendly pieces of advice you might give to any young aspiring entrepreneur, whether they're in fashion or anything else for that matter?
Yeah. Oh, so many, but
So
I'll
many,
try
right?
and narrow it down.
Yeah.
So one, you don't need everything to start. You just
Mm,
have to start. It's easy to see what this person is doing and what this person is doing, especially social media, it being a highlight of people's lives and not
right.
really like a full story. Um,
And if it's
it's
a
easy to
highlight
see
too,
like
sometimes it's a highly curated highlight on top of that, right? Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So like you might see like, oh my God, this person opened their business and they had a warehouse off rip,
Yeah.
right? But you don't really know what work went into that or how much money they saved prior to opening that warehouse or
Mm.
how they went into if they have investors, if they had I forget what it's called now, but like a starter fund,
Sure. Yeah, like a
where like
Kickstarter or
you have
something.
people
Yeah.
invest like
Yeah.
a Kickstarter, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say the most important thing you can do is start
Mm.
wherever that is. For me, it was creating the business
Yeah.
itself. It was putting it in paper. It was submitting it with my city, saying this is what I or my state saying this is what I want my business to be called. And that was to me my first step. And
Incorporating.
then
Yeah.
moving on from there. Yes, but I would just say just start. Whatever it is, whatever idea you have that has been eating away in your brain that you want to get it done and you want to start it, just start it because at the end of the day, it's never going to be perfect.
Right.
It's never going to be the way you envision it because something's always going to go wrong, trust. And you just have to kind of take the punches as they come and learn and use
Yeah.
that as a learning experience and then grow and grow and grow and grow. I always say to people, because some people have asked me if I have any regrets
Mm.
of things I did for my business. And I never look at it as a regret because it was a learning experience.
Sure.
So if you think about it, if it's a monetary loss, for example, well, people sometimes pay thousands of dollars to go to these courses that tell how to do a business or how to do this or how to not do that or whatever. To me, then I look at it and I'm like, well, this was my course. It was a crash course personal experience that I was able to learn from. And now I can, moving forward, add that to my list of questions or add that to my process, or this
Right.
is how I'm going to move through this moving forward, So I would just say just start because it's just never going to be perfect and
Right.
you're never going to feel ready ever. Like you could have all the money, you could have all the knowledge, but what's most difficult is taking the first step, in my
Mm.
opinion.
I think that's a really important piece of advice, Soul, is just take the step, right? Just make the phone call, talk to that person, send that email, do something to begin the journey, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure like when did your first podcast episode, you were like, oh God,
It's
what am
terrible.
I doing here? Yeah. And you look back at it and you're like, oh,
Oh no,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly.
But you have to start somewhere, and that's
You
just how
have
it
to.
is. You
You
gotta
have to
take the
start
first
somewhere.
step, and it might
Yeah.
be cringe, and it might be like you're like, "What was I doing? Why did I do that?" But then you learn, and then you move forward, and then you're happy that you started it because then it takes you to where you need to be.
Yeah. Perfect. 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 Soul, unbothered fashion. That's UNBTHRD fashion.com.
Mhm.
Soul is the name. Perfect name for you, by the way. Just because you
Thank
just
you.
radiate light. So perfect name for you.
Thank you.
So excited to talk to you today. Thank you for coming here, telling us your story, telling us the story of unbothered fashion. We wish you nothing but the best of luck. Excited for your collab for Hispanic Heritage Month. We'll keep our eyes out for that. And would love to stay in touch. So please, please, please let us do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for chatting with me. This was amazing. I loved it. And for all the people out there, thank you for sticking around with us. And the Hispanic Heritage Month collection will be available on the 23rd of August.
Perfect. Coming up real soon. Awesome. Thank you, Sol. We'll
Yes.
talk to you again soon.
Thank you.